Hey, church fam. Pastor Kevin here. I know you haven't seen me in a little bit, but we're going to rock and roll on this message today. Do me a favor. We're going to be talking about idols and tearing down idols. If this touches you or somebody you know needs to hear it, look, like it, share it, post in the comment. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's jump right in this thing. I want to start today in the book of Exodus, chapter 32, verse 1. And it says that when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off your gold earrings that your wives, your son, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. And he took what they had handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioned it with a tool, then said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival for the Lord." So the next day, the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards, they sat down and ate, drank, and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down because your people..." Now, look, you can't just read the Bible. You've got to read the Bible. Like, I love it when God looks at Moses and says, "Moses, these people ain't even my people anymore. Like, they down in the valley, turning it up. They going buck wild. You need to go get your people." Like, almost like, can you go get your son? Can you go get your child? I know, like, when Joe's being bad, I always know he's my child when he's being bad. Tabitha will be like, you need to come get your son." I'm like, he must be being bad. God's like, "Moses, go down and talk to your people, whom you have brought out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it. And they have said, 'These are our gods, O Israel, who brought us up out of Egypt.'" Now, I want to talk to you today from what is your golden calf? And understand, like, we've all got them. And it's funny how God made us in his image, but every day we try to make God in ours. And today, like, I got to thinking about it when I was putting this together. And I was like, what was a mountaintop experience in my life? And one mountaintop experience in my life, and I don't know if it's, one with you, when my kids were born. That was a mountaintop experience. That was, man, it was just, I remember it. I always will. But another mountaintop experience that I remember was when me and Tabitha got married. This December will be 18 years. And I remember the day in December 1st in 2007 when we said yes to each other, but no to everyone else. And I would always remember that mountaintop experience. And the reason why I thought about it today is because marriage is not a marriage is a covenant, not a contract. See, a contract is built on mutual distrust. It says, as long as you uphold your end of the deal, then I will uphold my end of the deal. But that's not marriage. Marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant. And a covenant says, even if you fail, I'm still in. See, a contract is often based on performance. And a covenant is based off a promise. Contracts protect your rights, but covenant lays down your rights. See, contract says, I'll meet you halfway, but covenant says, I'll go all the way. Contract only lasts until you find a better deal. Covenant lasts till death do us part. And I love that how God, he uses that for us God doesn't make contracts with us. He makes covenants with us, which is wonderful because he does this not because we're faithful, but it's because he is faithful. He makes covenant with us not because we're righteous, but because he is righteous. Not because we're consistent or loyal, but because he's consistent and loyal. And I thank God that when I entered into my relationship with God, that it was not signed under a contract. Because look, how many of you, if it was under contract, you would have failed. You would be in default of that contract because you would have already broken the contract. And wonderful thing about God is, we say cute little things like, oh, he's the God of second chances. I don't believe that. I believe he's the God of another chance. Because we are always needing another chance and another chance and another chance. And God, I promise you I'll never do that. And another chance and another chance. And I don't know if that's true for you, but I know it's true for me. And God is a God of covenant because covenant is way deeper than contract. That's why he made covenant with like Noah and Abraham and David. And here today we see that he makes covenant with the children of Israel at Mount Sinai. Now, Mount Sinai is a very, very important mountain because this is where we get the 10 Commandments. So this is where Moses goes up and down the mountain several times, getting instruction from God. This is where Moses sees God's glory. This is where he's like, God, I've been with you for so long. I want to see you. And God is like, look, if you see me, you're going to die. So I'll hide you in a cliff of a rock and I'll let my goodness pass by you. This is all taking place right here on Mount Sinai. But the most important thing about Mount Sinai is that this is where the wedding between God and the children of Israel take place. Prior to this, we see that the children of Israel have been slaves for 400 years. And they've been enslaved to the Egyptians and to Pharaoh. And they've been in a very toxic and abusive relationship. Like Moses was born a Hebrew, but raised as an Egyptian, which is very significant because while Israel was crying out to God for him to send a deliverer, the only person that could have ever gotten a conference with the Pharaoh would have been somebody that was raised by the Egyptians. And so it's very significant that he was a Hebrew, but raised by Egyptians. So he was the best of both worlds. He knew how to talk to the Pharaoh. He knew how to approach the Pharaoh because he had lived with him. But he also, at heart and, for all reality purposes, blood, was a Hebrew. So Moses was the only one that could walk in and say, Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, if you've watched the movie, that's the climax of the scene is him saying, Pharaoh, let my people go. And then that's the main part of it. But that's not what the text says. When Moses walks in and tells Pharaoh to let my people go, he doesn't stop there. Exodus 5:1 says that what Moses really says is, God said, let my people go so they can worship me. See, Exodus is not just a book of being set from slaves to free. It's not just a book of exit. It's also a book that God has set you free from something to be set free to something. He calls us out of one thing, but when he calls you out of something, he doesn't call you out of it just to be saved and be a Christian and actually do nothing with your life. He calls you out of that and he calls you into something else. He calls you into a calling. Oftentimes, we don't like to be called into the calling. What we want to be set free from addiction, but we don't want to be set free to be called into a ministry. You do realize oftentimes people tell me, they're like, well, I just don't know what my calling is. And I'm like, well, what did God set you free from? Because oftentimes what he sets you free from is the very thing that he called you back to set other people free from it. See, one thing is, like Moses, you can't lead people where you've never been. And so God had to send Moses into the wilderness for years so he would know how to live in the wilderness. So when he got back and brought the people out of captivity, He knew how to survive in the wilderness. That's the same thing with us. If you don't know your calling, what is it that God sets you free from? Most of us, though, let's be honest. What we want is we want to go to church on Sunday morning. We want to sing words off of a screen, kind of like Christian karaoke. We want to sit in the chair, and then we want to go home. We don't really want to serve. We don't really want to get involved. We just want to do our thing. And we're happy that God set us free from something. But we oftentimes lose sight that God is calling us into something else so we can help set other people free. Like, there's no spectators in the kingdom. God didn't save you for you to sit on your blessed assurance and do nothing. He saved you for a purpose. And so in the wilderness, what takes place is Israel and God are like in a dating season right now. And the reason why they're in a dating season is because God needed them to fully depend on Him. Like, He needed them to understand everything that they have, everything that they get, everything that happens comes from Him. Because how many of you know that you can be in a toxic environment so long that you begin to think that toxic environment is normal and everybody has that environment? Like, I have counseled people and people be like, oh, I just don't know. I just need to get out of this relationship. I know it's bad. And then they go find somebody and they end up in the same relationship, same toxic thing. It's like you dating the same person, just a different name. Oftentimes it's like, what are you thinking? This is the same situation you was in last time we was talking. Yeah, but Pastor, you don't understand. I prayed that God would send me somebody and that he would be wearing a flannel shirt. And that day, he walks in and he had a flannel shirt on. And I'm like, his whole closet is flannel. That's not God. That's a coincidence. And you in the same environment as you was in before. So here they are, and they're in the wilderness. And God is trying to prove to them that He's got them. Matter of fact, when they needed bread, they needed food, God rains down Panera bread called manna. I'm pretty sure it was Panera. They need water. And they're like, oh, we're going to die. We need water. And God's like, hey, Moses, hit that rock right there. And Fiji water comes flowing out of that rock. And the one that I like is like, God even took care of their clothes. 40 years, their clothes never wore out. Same clothes. Now, husbands, I know what you're thinking. You're like, gosh, I wish my wife could find that sale. Look, I don't know. That may help them. That may not. I ain't here to judge or say that. But the children of Israel, their clothes never wore out. Like God was trying to teach them. We're going to date for this time, but look, I need you to understand everything you get is from me. And how many of you know, like, it is one thing for you to get out of Egypt, but it's something else to get Egypt out of you. Like, it's one thing to get free from addiction, but it's a whole different ballgame to get addiction free from you. And in Exodus 19, we see the marriage, and in Exodus 20, we see the vows. Now, you know them as the 10 Commandments, but they're vows. God is telling them, this is what I expect. This is how I expect it. This is what I'm going to do for you. It's marriage vows. It says this in Exodus 21. It says, 20 verse 1, and God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. In other words, he's saying, hey, don't forget who brought you out of there. It was me, nobody else. Out of the land of slavery, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or earth beneath or waters below. In other words, I don't want you worshiping anything, and I'm going to cover all three places. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Now, how many of you Sunday school alumni know, like, well, Pastor Kevin, you just quoted the first 2 of the 10 Commandments. There's more. Yeah, but we don't have to go any further. Because if you can get the first 2 right, everything else takes care of itself. Like, if you can be faithful to God alone, you will naturally honor his name, his day, his people, and his ways. But if you don't get those two right, everything else fails. That's why he starts with those two. No other gods before me, no idols. In other words, love me first, love me only. And these vows, he's showing us his character first, but he's also revealing our tendency to evil. Like he says, thou shalt not lie. He's showing his character, God is truth. But he's also showing our tendency to evil. Oh, no, sir, officer, I didn't know how fast the speed limit was. I didn't realize how fast I was going. Oh, you knew you was breaking the law. He's trying to teach us in all of this. Here's my character. He says, thou shalt not commit adultery, because he is faithful, we are not. And so he's doing this to show us that, and he's trying to show us that our hearts are really idol factories. It's not if we will worship something else, it's what or who we will worship. It was once said like this: a counterfeit God is anything so central and essential to your life that if you should lose it, your life would feel hardly worth living. Let me ask you, you got any idols? We don't even often know that we are making idols in our life. The amazing thing is, like Moses, he's up on the mountain getting the written word of God. While they're getting the written word of God, they're actually in the valley breaking the exact thing that's getting written on the tablets. And I just want to say, like, idolatry is probably the sin behind all other sins. It creeps in under the surface, often unchecked by Christians, because as Christians, here's what we think. Well, for it to be idolatrous, you would either worship God or you would worship something else. But the reality of it is, it's not whether you worship God or something else. Idolatry is you worship God and something else. And Israel, they were worshiping God. Every time God would rain down manna, they would worship God, but they also was quick to build a calf too. See, they were worshiping God and something else. And God says, I don't want to be just a piece of your life. I want to be your whole life. It's either I am God of all or I'm not God at all. And the enemy wants you to add God to the list of things that you love. And God says this very clearly. He's like, I'm a jealous God. Our relationship is between me and you, nobody else. I mean, it would be like this. It would be like if I would tell the lovely Miss Tabitha, Tabitha, I love you. You're my wife. And look, you're on the top of the list of women that I love. How many of you know your pastor would be dead? Like, I'd be a little pile of ashes right now. Like, all the smoke and lightning that was going on that mountain, like, would have come out of her eyes and she would be killing me. Look, if it doesn't work in our relationships like that, if you want your relationship between you and your spouse to be exclusive, how much more does God want your relationship with him to be exclusive? So I got to thinking, like, why did they even build the idol to begin with? Maybe if we understand why they built the idol, maybe we can understand why we build idols. And I think I found it. Let's look at it. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long, there it is, right there. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they're down there in the valley. They're like, Aaron, it's been 40 days. We don't know if Moses is dead, if he's coming back. Maybe he left us here and nobody's heard from him. It's been 40 days. Like, how long does it take? And I got to wondering, like, in my own life, sometimes in my own life, I've created idols because I've wondered, how long will God provide for me? How long will he protect me? See how impatience incubates idolatry. If anybody ever had a time where you've been crying out to God for so long and God feels so distant that you begin to stop relying on God and start relying on yourself. And honestly, like in those times, what we're doing is we're making ourselves an idol. We're saying, God, I'm no longer trusting in you. You've been so long. You've been too long for this, God. I've given you too much time for this. So I'm obviously going to have to do this myself. I'm obviously going to have to rely on my 401k. I'm obviously going to have to rely on figuring this out myself. We're making ourselves as idols. And we're saying, I trust myself more than I trust you. Now, Aaron says, hey, give me your gold, which is a whole nother problem. Moses should have fired his brother from day one. But he says, bring me your gold. And, when he said that, I was like, bring me your gold. But they were slaves. What are they even doing with gold? Then I thought about it. God is a great record keeper. And when God sets you free from something, God will always make the enemy repay you what he stole from you. They've been in captivity for 400 years, and when they walked out with all of the gold of Egypt. Now I get why God had to not only part the Red Sea, but he had to dry the ground up. And we say wonderful things about, how, he dried the ground up. And when he does that, you're not gonna bring your past into your future. You're not gonna bring the mud of the Red Sea into your future, into your promised land. And that's all great and wonderful and everything. But let me tell you something. He had to dry that ground up because when they crossed the Red Sea, they crossed loaded. They had all the gold of Egypt. And I don't know, maybe somebody out there today, maybe God is saying, I've been seeing what you've been going through. But what I need you to do is just keep worshiping me. Just keep focused on me. He says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Stop focusing on everything else. Focus on me. I will take care of it, and I will make the enemy repay you what he stole from you. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, but wait a second. Because the gold was also a blessing. Because God gave them the gold, had Egypt give them the gold when he left. And I'm like, well, how did the blessing turn into an idol? And then I thought about it. I've been around people that have been telling me, oh, Pastor, just pray for me. I'm so lonely. I just want a spouse. Pastor, I just want somebody to love and to be around. God, just pray that God would send me a spouse. And then they do. And it's like, well, wait a second. Where is that? They used to serve. They were a door greeter, or they was in the worship department, or they was in the kids department, and now they're not even around anymore. Like God gave you a blessing of a spouse, and now you're nowhere to be found around God. And I'm like, the blessing that God gives us, sometimes we can turn that into an idol. And here's what's funny. God has to tell Moses what's going on. Moses is up on the mountain. Children of Israel down in the valley turning it up. And God's having to tell Moses, hey man, they down there acting like animals. You know why? Because they was worshiping an animal. Oftentimes what you worship is what you look like. You worship money, you're going to look like greed. You worship your family, it's going to look like you worship your family. If you worship, what the opinion of others, you're going to look like you worship the opinion of others. And I love how Moses is like, God's ready to wipe them out. God's like, they down there, they dancing around that thing butt naked, turning it up. Like, I don't know what it was about people in the Bible wanting to dance butt naked. Like they was doing it. David danced naked. I mean, what is up with that? But anyhow, that's a different message for a different day. But here's the thing, like Moses has to tell God, he's like, because God's ready to kill him. He's like, Moses, just get out the way. I'm going to wipe them out. I'm going to pull a Noah on them. I'm going to destroy them. It's going to be good. Moses pleads with God, and he's like, God, remember your promise. Remember your word. Remember your name. And God changes his mind and doesn't kill him. Doesn't wipe them all out. I got to thinking about it. I'm like, this is a picture of intercessory prayer. When you remind God of the promises that He has for your family, when you remind God for the promises that's been spoken over your children, this is saying, hey, God, don't forget what you said. I know my child's wayward. I know this is far from. God, don't forget. And you plead and you stand in the middle. And so Moses, he's coming down the mountain. He's got the tablets, and he's carrying them. And if you ever seen the movie, Moses gets to the bottom of it and he's like, I've got the 15. And all of a sudden he drops one and he looks around and he's like, 10 commandments. Y'all never saw that? Uh-huh. Moses gets so mad that he melts down the gold, grinds it up, puts it in the water, and makes them drink it. Oh, brother had a temper. Oh, big time. But here's the thing about idols, they'll always corrupt you. I've seen people who have made idols out of their spouses and out of their children, and this is the thing. Eventually what happens, nobody can take the weight of being your joy and fulfillment, and they actually drive away far from them the very thing that they make an idol out of. So, I got a couple of questions I want to ask you as we wrap everything up. Number one, what can I not imagine life being complete without? What do I obsess about obtaining? What am I most terrified of losing? And where do I turn for comfort and assurance when things go wrong? You need to ask yourself, what can I not imagine life being complete without? What do I obsess about obtaining? What am I most terrified of losing? And where do I turn for comfort and assurance when things go wrong? See, the wonderful thing is it's a blessing and a curse. We become like whatever we worship. When Moses worshiped God, he was on the mountain for 40 days. And here's what it says in Exodus 32:30. It says, the next day Moses said to the people, you have committed a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. So Moses went back up to the Lord and said, oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now please forgive their sins. But if not, then blot me out of the book that you've written. I was like, whoa, wait a second, Moses. Like, you wasn't even down there. You wasn't the one dancing around the calf turning up. You was on the mountain with God worshiping. Like, why are you telling God, please forgive them? But if you don't want to forgive them, then put their sin on me. I was blown away. I was like, wait a second. That looks like a picture of our Savior, Jesus hanging on the cross saying, Father, please forgive them. Put their sin on me, God. Take it out on me. Look, Moses began to look like the very thing that he was worshiping. Let me ask you, what do you look like? Do you look like the company guy? The person that the company needs, I'm there. When God needs, it's going to be after the company needs. What do you look like? Do you look like greed? Or do you resemble more like Christ? Where you say, God, I'm going to trust you and you alone. Now understand, God didn't wipe them out. He didn't kill all of them. But when they made that golden staff, that golden calf, 3,000 people died because of it. And we say cute little things like, well, he's the same God today as he was back then, and he will be tomorrow, and God's unchanging, and we all clap and shout and everything else, and that's all wonderful. But understand something. If you believe he's the same God today, tomorrow, and forever, understand something, then that means he's the same God of back then. And if he wouldn't allow them to get away with idols in their life back then, he won't allow you to get away with idols today in your life. If he did, he would have to tell those 3,000 people, I'm sorry for what I've did. And he's not about to turn around and say, I'm sorry, because he's a jealous God. He wants the relationship with you and you alone. He wants us to have no other gods before him. And it's our responsibility to look at our life and say, wait a second. Maybe this right here has become an idol in my life. Because maybe I'm worshiping God, but maybe I'm also worshiping something else. So, take some time. Think about it. Let's break some idols off today. Let's break down some golden calves. Trust me, we've all got them. Myself included. When I put this message together, I had areas in my life that God was pointing at and saying, hey, this has become more important to you than I am. You need to do that right here, this one right here. You need to get straight with me. That's not a part of our relationship. And I know if it's true in my life, then it's true in others. So, Father, I come to you today, Lord, and I just pray for everybody who's watching this. Lord, may you touch our hearts. May you point out the areas in our life, Lord, that is corrupt, Lord, that has become idol factories. May we remove that. May we remove the idols from our life, Lord. Point it out. Show us. Convict us right now of the areas where we're worshiping you and something else. And may we remove that and give you the one spot, Lord, in our life, the God of us, and may you be God alone. And may you be God of all in our life. We ask this in your name. Amen.